facts from each of the categories today. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you can just sit back and relax and ignore the bird that has been chirping outside my window all day. Yeah, let's get started. I will try to talk slow. I usually talk so fast, but I'll do my best. So we are starting with our animal category, and we are going to do facts about marine mammals today. Marine mammals. Alright. Marine mammals are warm-blooded animals that live in or very near the ocean, breathe air, give live birth, and nurse their young. Whales, dolphins, and porpoises are classified in the cetacean group of marine mammal. There are over 70 different species of cetacean. There are two suborders of whales, baleen whales and toothed whales. Baleen whales filter their food through huge comb-like plates made of flexible keratin. Baleen whales include humpback whales, blue whales, North Atlantic right whales, and bowhead whales. A blue whale can eat up to 4 tons of krill in a day. The call of the blue whale registers an incredible 188 decibels, making it the loudest animal on Earth. The blue whale is the largest animal that has ever lived, including dinosaurs. A newborn blue whale calf is almost as long as a school bus. Male humpback whales sing complex songs in winter breeding areas that can last up to 20 minutes and be heard miles away. Bowhead whales have massive skulls that can be over 16.5 feet long, or about 30 to 40% of their entire body length, that they use to break through ice. When a whale surfaces after a dive, it exhales air from its lungs through its blowhole. As the warmed air hits the colder ocean air, it condenses into droplets, making it appear that the whale is spouting water. Unsurprisingly, toothed whales have teeth that they use to sense, capture, and/or eat prey. Whales in this category include narwhals, belugas, and sperm whales. When hunting squid species of dolphin inhabit every ocean in the world, and even some rivers. Each dolphin has a unique whistle to identify itself. Bottlenose dolphins surface 2 or 3 times per minute for air. Right whale dolphins are the only members of the dolphin family without dorsal fins. Seals, sea lions, and walruses are all grouped together in the scientific order Pinnipedia, which is Latin for fin-footed. All pinnipeds have 4 fins or flippers. Pinnipeds spend most of their lives swimming and eating in water and come onto land or ice to give birth, rest, and molt. Phocidae, or earless seals, have tiny ear holes but no external ear flaps. Walruses in the Pacific migrate with moving ice, climbing atop it to rest and give birth. Manatees and dugongs are sirenians. Like cetaceans, sirenians spend their whole lives in water. Sirenians are the only group of marine mammal that eat no meat. Polar bears and sea otters are marine viscipeds, split-footed members of the order Carnivora. Although skilled swimmers, polar bears are the marine mammal least adapted to aquatic existence. Polar bears rest, mate, give birth, and nurse their young on the ice. They are particularly vulnerable to reductions in sea ice. Polar bears use a nose-to-nose greeting when asking another polar bear for something. Sea otters hold hands while sleeping to keep from drifting apart. Sea otters have a pouch under their forearm to store food and their favorite rocks. I love that. Okay, we're moving on to Planet Earth category, and we're doing some plant facts. So we've got animals, now we have plants. There are about 400,000 known plant species. The giant corpse flower is named for its smell. It secretes cadaverine and putrescine, odor compounds responsible for its rotting flesh smell. The first type of aspirin came from the tree bark of a willow tree. Bamboo can grow 35 inches in a single day. Corn is the most planted crop in the United States. Wheat is the third most produced grain in the world after corn and rice. There are about 40,000 different types of rice. Cacti spines can be up to 6 inches long. The baobab tree is the world's largest succulent, reaching heights of 75 feet. It can live for several thousand years. Dendrochronology is the science of calculating a tree's age by its rings. The first potatoes were cultivated in Peru about 7,000 years ago. Strawberries are the only fruit that bears seeds on the outside. The average strawberry has 200 seeds. Poison ivy always coil clockwise. Morning glory blooms open from dawn to mid-morning. The California redwood, coast redwood, and giant sequoia are the tallest and largest living organism in the world. A sunflower looks like one large flower, but each head is composed of hundreds of tiny flowers called florets, which ripen to become the seeds. Sunflowers range in height from 1-foot tall dwarfs to 15-foot high giants. The lemon tree is the smallest evergreen tree that is native to Asia. Most coal is formed from ancient plant remains. The Rafflesia arnoldi plant has the largest single bloom of any plant, measuring 3 feet across. Also known as meat flower, the parasitic Rafflesia arnoldi can hold several gallons of nectar, and its smell has been compared to buffalo carcass in an advanced stage of decomposition. Lovely. Aquatic duckweed is the smallest flowering plant on Earth. The plant is only 0.61 millimeter long, and the edible fruit is about the size of a grain of salt. Stinging nettle leaves contain a mixture of chemicals that it injects into the skin of animals. Dutchman's breeches are named for their flowers, which look like upside-down pants. Thistles have spines on their stems and leaves that keep most animals away from the plant. Vanilla comes from a type of orchid. Although tulips are associated with Holland, they are actually not native there. Tulips descend mostly from species originating in the Middle East. During the 1600s, tulip bulbs were worth more than gold in Holland. The craze was called tulip mania and crashed the Dutch economy. The Jerusalem artichoke is not really an artichoke. The passion flower gets its name from the complex structure of its flowers, which can be seen as symbols of the crucifixion of Christ. Although other plants die if they lose 8 to 12% of their water content, the resurrection fern can survive despite losing 97% of its water content. Spanish moss is neither moss nor Spanish. It's related to the pineapple and has been used to stuff furniture, car seats, and mattresses. The technical term for air plant is epiphyte. These plants get moisture and nutrients from the air. The carnivorous king monkey cup traps prey such as scorpions, mice, rats, and birds in pitchers up to 14 inches long and 6 inches wide. It then digests them in a half-gallon of enzymatic fluid. Ancient Greeks gave hemlock to prisoners who were condemned to die, including Socrates. Ingesting hemlock will eventually paralyze the nervous system, causing death from lack of oxygen to the brain and heart. California boasts the oldest known living tree, a bristlecone pine named Methuselah. bras shape. Bras were invented in 1913 when American socialite Mary Phelps Jacob tied two handkerchiefs together with a ribbon. You're telling me we got the airplane before we got bras? Okay. Phelps Jacob patented the idea a year later. Maidenform introduced modern cup sizes in 1928. Around 1920, as women became more involved in sports such as tennis and bicycling, loose, comfortable bloomers replaced corsets as the undergarment of choice. The constricting corset soon fell out of favor altogether. The thong made its first public U.S. appearance at the 1939 World's Fair, when New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia required nude dancers to cover themselves, if only barely. Thongs gained popularity as swimwear in Brazil in the 1970s and are now a form of underwear. Okay, I think we're gonna stick with history for a second, but switch gears to World War II, when they had bras. Alright. Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party swept to power in 1933. Hitler rebuilt the army and air force and expanded Germany's borders. Most notoriously, the Germans undertook the systematic brutalization and mass murder of Jews, Romani, homosexuals, and others deemed undesirable. In an ominous prelude to World War II, Japanese forces invaded eastern China in 1937, starting a war there that would continue until 1945. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland and France. Britain declared war on Germany. World War II had begun. The 12-day conquest of Yugoslavia cost Germany only 151 lives. Partisan fighting after the surrender would claim far more. Poland was the first to discover the underlying clues to the German Enigma encryption machine. Then, in 1939, the Polish handed the ball off to the British. It then became the Ultra Project. This handsome present may have been Poland's greatest gift to Allied victory. The main success of the Nazi Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, that raced across Europe was due to tank units supported from the air by dive bombers, such as the Junkers Ju-87, or Stuka. I don't know. The Stukas were fitted with sirens, which sounded like screaming to terrify the population. The Blitz, Germany's terror bombing campaign against Britain in 1940 to 41, was a horrifying experience. More than 43,000 civilians died during the bombing. 1 million homes were destroyed or damaged. The Blitz created dangerous morale problems in Britain. To galvanize the people, Churchill lied and said that a German invasion might be imminent. The fib worked, and the British rallied. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, the United States joined the global war that had been raging for nearly routes to learn where ships were normally positioned in the harbor. Knowing that America would enter the war after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Winston Churchill said he went to bed that night and slept the sleep of the saved and thankful. The Soviet Union joined the Allies when Germany invaded in June 1941. The Allied powers included Britain, the US, and the Soviet Union, among others. The Axis powers were Germany, Japan, and Italy. Before the war, Japanese pilots were selected at age 14 from the best academic and most physically fit students. Their 5-year training program was the world's most arduous. A U.S. draftee had to be at least 5 feet tall and weigh 105 pounds. He also had to have at least 12 teeth. Pretty low standards. The two most common physical attributes that led to a draftee being rejected were flat feet and venereal disease. Denmark was the only European country to cut back on its military after war broke out. Beginning in the fall of 1942, each American family was limited to 3 gallons of gasoline per week and 2 new pairs of shoes per year. The famous U.S. bazooka anti-tank weapon fired a 60-millimeter projectile. Germany's counterpart, the less common Panzerschreck, packed an 88-millimeter wallop but had a much shorter effective range. The Nazis paid one of their most successful spies, the valet to the British ambassador in Turkey, in counterfeit currency. In 1943, Vichy France's coerced tribute accounted for roughly 25% of Nazi Germany's gross national product. U.S. riflemen often used condoms to keep mud and dirt out of the barrels of their rifles. The longest battle of World War II was the Battle of the Atlantic, which was fought 1939 to 1945. From 1942, U.S. Marines in the Pacific used the Navajo language as their secret code. The language didn't have the vocabulary for existing World War II technology, so existing words had to be given new meanings. Around 400 Navajo Indians, or code talkers, were trained to use the code, and the Japanese never cracked it. The 1942-43 battle and siege of Stalingrad resulted in more Russian deaths than the U.S. and Britain sustained in all of World War II. 4 of every 5 German soldiers killed in the war died on the Eastern Front. Auschwitz-Birkenau was one of 6 Nazi concentration camps. The others were Belzec, Chelmno, Majdanek, Sobibor, and Treblinka. All were located in Poland. Oh, that was about extermination camps. Concentration camps, as distinct from extermination camps, were cited throughout Germany and across Nazi-occupied Europe. Okay. Hamburgers were dubbed Liberty Steaks in the U.S. during the war to avoid the German-sounding name. The first bomb dropped on Berlin by the Allies killed an elephant in the Berlin Zoo. A A Soviet soldier's daily vodka ration was 100 grams, or about 3.5 ounces. The desperate house-to-house fighting in Stalingrad led the German soldiers to call it a rat's war. Nearly 180 Londoners died during a raid on March 3rd, 1943, but not from bombs. A woman tripped entering an underground station. The crowd rushing for cover crushed her and many others, suffocating them. Wow. D-Day, June 6, 1944, was the launching date for Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied Western Europe. In one of the most complex operations in military history, U.S., British, and Canadian forces landed simultaneously on 5 separate beachheads in Normandy, Germany. For the D-Day invasion, British vehicles carried huge spools of coconut husk matting to unroll on the beach, which helped tanks avoid bogging down in the soft ground. About 12,000 Allied aircraft supported the Normandy invasion. D-Day owed its success in part to weather reports from lonely icy stations in Arctic Greenland and Spitsbergen and Jan Mayen in Norway. The invasion needed to occur on June 5th, 6th, or 7th to take advantage of the moon and the tides. D-Day was postponed a day due to rain and gale force winds, which would have been disastrous for the Allies. Interesting. The Sullivans, a family from Waterloo, Iowa, lost 5 sons in U.S. Navy service in the Pacific. Their sister Genevieve promptly took up her fallen brother's sword. She enlisted in the Navy's Women Accepted for Voluntary Emergency Service. When U.S. Marines landed on Guam, they were greeted by a sign that read, "Welcome, Marines." The sign had been left by U.S. Navy frogmen who had earlier scouted the area for mines. Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels believed so strongly in the power of patriotic music that Germany's troops were issued a patriotic songbook as part of their standard kit. Contrary to most accounts, Goebbels did not have a club foot. He suffered from a bone marrow affliction as a child. The surgery shortened and weakened his left leg. Interesting. Let's see. World War II was the first major conflict in which penicillin was used. It drastically reduced battlefield fatalities. In the first week of May 1945, following Hitler's suicide on April 30th, the Nazi regime collapsed. Berlin fell to the Soviets, and Axis armies in Italy gave up. On May 7th, Germany surrendered, and the war for Europe was over. World War II ended on September 2nd, 1945, when Japan signed a surrender agreement following nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan's Lieutenant Hiru Onoda didn't surrender until Games facts, and today we are going to do facts about chess. These are a lot of good nerd topics today. Well, we did talk about underwear. Okay. Talking about chess. Although the exact origins of chess are a bit murky, most historians agree that the oldest precursor to the game was a 6th century Indian strategy game called chaturanga. In Sanskrit, the word means 4 arms or 4 divisions. Today, there is a yoga pose called chaturanga that describes the 4-limbed staff pose. The 4 divisions were infantry, cavalry, elephantry, and chariotry. Each were represented by a game piece. From India, the pastime made its way to Persia, where the rules began to evolve, and the game more closely resembled what we know today. Shatranj, as it was known in Persia, embraced the battle theme of its predecessor, adding a game piece to represent a king, and the objective became to capture the opponent's king. Players exclaimed Shamat, Persian for the king is helpless, when attack was imminent. In Arabic, the exclamation used was Shakmat, which over time became the well-known checkmate. By the year 1000, chess had spread from Middle Eastern lands into Russia and Europe. The Moors carried the game with them to northern Africa, Sicily, and the Iberian Peninsula. Buddhist monks and Silk Road traders introduced the game to the Far East, where it evolved into a game called Xiangqi, or elephant chess, a variant of the game which is still played in China today. The oldest known chess pieces were discovered at an ancient site in Uzbekistan, consisting of a king, a chariot, a vizier, a horse, an elephant, and 2 soldiers. The ivory pieces were dated to around 760 AD. Chess grew in popularity in Europe over the next several centuries, becoming a favorite among the upper classes and earning the nickname the Game of Kings. Ancient chess pieces often correlate with militaristic symbols of the time, including chariots, elephants, and soldiers. But as the game gained popularity in Europe, the pieces took on more of the look of a noble court. Prior to about 1850, there was no standard chess set for competitors to use, and chessboards and pieces came in a myriad of styles, depending on country and geographical region. The first modern chess tournament was held in London in 1851. The benchmark piece that can jump over other pieces. While in English-speaking countries, the knight is sometimes nicknamed the horse, other languages often call this piece the jumper. While today the queen is the most powerful piece on a chessboard, this was not always the case. Before the 15th century, this piece was one of the weakest in the game, able to only advance one diagonal square at a time. As the game gained in popularity, the queen's move evolved into a combination of the rook's straight line moves and the bishop's diagonal moves, giving her the ability to reach up to 27 squares from one single position. The Queen's Gambit opening was mentioned in one of the earliest known writings about chess, the Göttingen manuscript of 1490. The Queen's Gambit is still commonly played today. Actor Anya Taylor-Joy played Beth Harmon, the chess prodigy protagonist of the Netflix series The Queen's Gambit, released in 2020. So good. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. Experts estimate that theoretically a chess game could encompass 5,949 total moves. At a move a minute, that game would last 4 days. That's a long time. We are now moving on to our health and human body category, and we are first going to talk about blood transfusions. Blood transfusions are performed about every 2 seconds somewhere in the world. One of the earliest recorded blood transfusions took place in the 1490s. Pope Innocent VIII suffered a massive stroke, and his physician advised a blood transfusion. Unfortunately, the methods used were crude and unsuccessful. The Pope died within the year, and so did the 3 young boys whose blood was used. That's so sad. Richard Lower, an Oxford physician in the mid-1600s, performed blood transfusions between dogs and eventually between a dog and a human. The dog was kept alive via the transfusion, and the experiment was considered a success. Several years later, cross-species transfusions were deemed unsafe. In 1818, British obstetrician James Blundell performed the first successful transfusion of human blood. Blundell's patient, a woman suffering postpartum hemorrhaging, was given a syringe full of her husband's blood. The woman lived, and Blundell became a pioneer in the study of blood transfusions. They're lucky that they were a match. They probably didn't even know that at the time. 1 unit of blood can be separated into several components: red blood cells, plasma, platelets, and cryoprecipitate, which is a substance helpful in the clotting process. In 1916, scientists introduced a citrate glucose solution that allowed blood to be stored for several days. Due to this discovery, the first blood depot was established during World War I in Britain. Nearly 16 million blood components are transfused each year in the U.S. If you need a blood transfusion, try not to need one in the summer or around the holidays. Shortages of all blood types happen during these times. Donating blood seems to appeal to of blood donors are registered voters. Interesting. Kind of similar, we're going to do a few facts about medical leeches and maggots. Which I didn't know maggots were used medically, but let's learn about it. Maggots are nothing more than fly larvae, one of the most basic forms of life. But they can be used to fight infection in people who do not respond to antibiotics. Applied to a dressing that is made in the form of a small cage, maggots are applied to almost any area that does not respond well to conventional treatment. The maggot thrives on consuming dead tissue, a process called debridement. After several days, the maggots are removed, but only after they have consumed up to 10 times their own weight in dead tissue, cleaned the wound, and left an ammonia-like antimicrobial enzyme behind. Leeches are small animal organisms that have been used by physicians and barbers for over 2,500 years for treating everything from headaches and mental illnesses to hemorrhoids. Used extensively until the 19th century, the golden age of leeches was usurped by the adoption of modern concepts of pathology and microbiology. Heredotherapy, or the medicinal use of leeches, has enjoyed a recent resurgence after their demonstrated ability to heal patients when other means have failed. Leeches are raised commercially around the world, with the majority coming from France, Hungary, Ukraine, Romania, Egypt, Algeria, Turkey, and the United States. Leeches feed on the blood of humans and other animals by piercing the skin with a long proboscis. Oftentimes, this is the most effective way to drain a post-surgical area of blood, and it can actually facilitate the healing process. At the same time leeches attach to their host, they inject a blood-thinning anticoagulant. They continue until they have consumed up to 5 times their body weight in blood. The host rarely feels the bite because the leech also injects a local anesthetic before it pierces the skin. That's interesting. I guess that's like evolutionary to, like, so that the whatever they're trying to hurt, like, won't feel what they're doing, so they don't know. But that's pretty interesting. Alright, next we are going to do 5 myths about space. 5 myths about space. Myth number 1. There is no gravity in space. There is a difference between weightlessness and zero-G force. Astronauts may effortlessly float inside a space shuttle, but they are still under the grasp of approximately 10% of Earth's gravity. Myth number 2. Gravitational forces are powerful enough to distort a person's features. Truth. This popular notion can be traced to the fertile minds of Hollywood filmmakers. Although gravitational forces press against the astronauts, they are perfectly capable of performing routine tasks, and their faces do not resemble Halloween masks. Myth number 3. An ill-suited astronaut will explode. Another Hollywood invention. The human body is too tough to space travelers will be asphyxiated. Although the danger of being stranded in space is very real, astronauts in such a situation would not die from a lack of oxygen. Carbon dioxide in a disabled spacecraft could build up to life-threatening levels long before the oxygen ran out. Myth number 5. The world watched the Challenger disaster. Stories tell of the millions of horrified viewers who watched as the spacecraft and its solid rocket boosters broke apart on live television. Except for cable network CNN, however, the major networks had ceased their coverage of the launch. However, many school children were watching to see Krista McAuliffe, the first teacher in space. Aw, and she was on it. That's terrible. Alright, this may be our last category today. It's about people, and we're going to be doing facts about Henry VIII's wives. In total, Henry VIII married 6 times. His first marriage was to Catherine of Aragon. This arrangement was pushed by Catherine and Henry's fathers. Catherine had been married to Henry's older brother Arthur for only a few months. Upon his passing, Henry was betrothed to the widow. That's crazy. In this way, the fathers were guaranteeing an ongoing union between England and Spain. It took Henry nearly a quarter of a century to end this marriage of convenience, but he was finally granted an annulment on the grounds that Catherine had once been married to his brother. The Pope refused to grant this annulment, so Henry arranged to receive it from the Archbishop of Canterbury. This severely damaged Henry's and England's relationship with the Roman Catholic Church. 3 years later, Henry closed Catholic monasteries and abbeys. Anne Boleyn, Marchioness of Pembroke, was a lady-in-waiting. Anne was an English noble, educated in France, who provided reputable servitude to Queen Catherine. During her period of personal assistance, Anne and Henry began their affair, with Henry proposing marriage roughly 6 years prior to his annulment from Catherine. Some argue that the pair did not consummate their affair until Henry's annulment was final, although others claim she was pregnant when she married. According to the theory, Anne was not so moralistic that she wouldn't engage with a married man. She had simply seen the fate that befell her sister Mary when she carried on with Henry. When Mary Boleyn finally gave in and consummated her affair with the king, she was awarded with a pink slip and sent packing. It turns out Mary was the luckier of the two, being simply sent away. Anne, on the other hand, after failing to produce a male heir, was beheaded on trumped-up charges of adultery and witchcraft. Upon Queen Anne's death, he plucked his third wife, Jane Seymour, from Anne's group of attendants. Of course, it has been suggested that Henry's interest in Jane was the true reason he had Anne killed, not the 6 fingers he accused her of having, which was seen as the mark of the devil. Unfortunately, Jane only lasted a year as Henry's wife. Although she finally brought Henry a legitimate male heir, Edward, Jane succumbed to a fever caused by childbirth complications. was said to have voiced his misgivings upon finally meeting his bride-to-be. While striking in personality, Anne was not as agreeable in appearance as the king hoped. He likened Anne's visage to a horse. Wow, what a great guy he was. Although he followed through with the vows, Anne, dubbed Flanders Mare by Henry, was released from her role as queen through an annulment. The tables were turned on the adulterous King Henry by his fifth wife, Catherine Howard, a woman who was known to engage in illicit affairs of her own. Even before marrying the king, Catherine, who was Anne Boleyn's first cousin, was intimately involved with many men. Soon after they wed, the king discovered that his bride was still sowing her oats with other suitors. Unsurprisingly, he had her beheaded as well. Henry's sixth and final wife, Catherine Parr, was famous for her own lengthy list of marriages. With 2 marriages before Henry and 1 after, Catherine holds the record for the most married queen in English history. Pretty cool. She is also the only one of Henry's 6 brides to make it out of her marriage alive and without an annulment. Only 4 years after their wedding, Henry died at age 55 from obesity-related complications. Catherine escaped the fates of Henry's first 5 wives and survived as a widow, free to marry one last time to Thomas Seymour, Jane Seymour's brother. Oh my god, there were only like 2 bloodlines involved in this entire thing. Because he married, or he wasn't married to Catherine. Hold on. Who did he marry? Catherine had been married to Henry's older brother. Okay, so they're related. He marries her, and then we've got the cousin. Catherine was Anne Boleyn's first cousin. That is so crazy. So much mixing of like, that's funny. I did not know all of that. All I knew was that Anne Boleyn was beheaded, and that he had 6 wives, 2 Catherines. Interesting. Okay. So, Catherine, what's her name? Catherine Howard and Anne Boleyn were beheaded. Alright, good to know. That was really interesting. I hope you liked these facts from my crazy looking book. Did a bunch of categories today, probably less categories than usual because there were like a lot of facts involved in each one. But I hope you enjoyed those facts. Lots of history and stuff like that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'm sure we will have some more videos with this book. It's like impossible for me to tell how far into it we are because I'm not just reading it front to back, but we'll get through it at some point. But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. My throat hurts now. I'm very tired of talking. But yeah, I hope you guys have a really lovely day or night, and I will see you in my next video. So